Just focus is the most damaging advice smart people ever received. Not because it's hard, but because it was designed for a world that no longer exists. You didn't fail to focus because you're lazy. You didn't fail because you lack discipline, and you didn't fail because you're incapable of commitment. You failed because that advice was built for a brain living in a world that no longer exists. If just focus actually worked, you would have done it already. Think about that for a second. Look back at your life and you'll probably see a familiar pattern. Half-finished projects everywhere. A guitar collecting dust. A website that almost launched. Baking equipment you were convinced would change your life. A sudden obsession with jiu-jitsu or photography or DJing or learning how to rewire your apartment from scratch. And running quietly alongside all of it, a very specific kind of shame. Not loud shame, quiet shame. The kind that shows up when you compare yourself to people your age who seem settled. Senior engineers, directors, founders, people who picked a lane early and stayed there. Meanwhile, you feel like you're constantly starting over. At some point, a label gets handed to you, scattered, unfocused, unreliable. And eventually, you internalize it. The phrase, jack of all trades, master of none, starts looping in your head, usually without the part people conveniently forget, but often better than a master of one. So you start assuming something is wrong with you. But here's the uncomfortable idea. Your problem is not that you can't focus. Your problem is that you're forcing yourself into a strategy that no longer matches the world you're living in. For most of the last century, success followed a simple rule set. You picked one skill, went as deep as possible, and stayed there. Careers were stable. Tools lasted decades. Specialization paid. That's not the world you live in anymore. Industries shift. Tools expire. Entire roles disappear. And without consciously thinking about it, your nervous system has already noticed. That's why your interests keep drifting. That's why one year you're deep into programming, the next into strength training, then music, then systems, then something completely different. From the outside, it looks like chaos. From the inside, it feels like confusion and guilt. But what if it's neither? What if you're not failing to specialize? What if you're adapting? You're not built to be I-shaped. You're not even T-shaped. You build multiple pillars of competence over time, not all at once, and not in a straight line. This is where most people sabotage themselves. They try to build every pillar simultaneously. They attempt to master data science, write a novel, launch a startup, and reinvent their body at the same time. They burn out. Then they decide they're broken. They're not broken. They're just using the wrong strategy. People who actually thrive this way practice serial mastery, life in seasons, one pillar at a time, depth first, integration later. That's also why imposter syndrome sticks to you, not because you lack ability, but because your value doesn't come from extreme depth in one narrow lane. It comes from synthesis, from connecting domains that rarely talk to each other. And this isn't just interesting, it's protective. In biology, redundancy isn't waste, it's survival. Systems last because they have backups. Your diverse skills work the same way. If one industry collapses, you don't collapse with it, you pivot. There's one last thing that explains why people like you often feel late to life. Your path doesn't look impressive early on. It doesn't stack clean titles or obvious status signals in your 20s or 30s, but it compounds differently. While specialists sprint upward in a straight line, you're building a lattice, slower to recognize, harder to explain, but far more resilient under pressure. Comparing yourself to people who chose one narrow path is a losing game. You're not behind. You're playing a different game, one where adaptability beats early optimization. Once you stop measuring yourself by the wrong scoreboard, the anxiety drops, and in its place comes clarity. Not "I'll figure it out someday," but I know how to move forward without betraying how my mind actually works. The practical implication is simple. Stop optimizing for continuous focus and start designing for constrained depth. Pick one pillar per season, 6 to 18 months, define an explicit depth threshold, and deliberately pause all other ambitions without guilt. Measure progress by skill acquisition, leverage, and downstream optionality, not by titles, followers, or external validation. Execution requires systems, not willpower. Use time-boxed immersion, output-based goals, and planned integration phases where prior pillars are recombined with the new one. Periodically audit your skill lattice for transferability and redundancy. This isn't indecision, it's portfolio management under uncertainty. If this hit, subscribe to the channel. Like the video if you've ever been told to just focus, and write a comment. How many unfinished paths are behind you, and which season are you in right now?